What if I told you that one of the greatest achievements in human history almost ended in disaster? With less than a minute to spare, on July 20th, 1969, as millions watched around the world, a spacecraft was descending toward the moon. Everything seemed under control, until suddenly, alarms began to sound. The computer was failing, the landing site was unsafe, and the fuel was running out. In that moment, everything could have been lost. Years of work, thousands of people, all depending on just a few final moments. But instead, something incredible happened. On July 20th, 1969, at exactly 2017 Universal Time Coordinated, a machine carrying two human beings touched down on the surface of the moon. It was a moment that would be remembered forever. But this moment was not just about landing. It was the result of years of effort, countless failures, and 12 critical minutes that would decide everything. To understand how this happened, we must go back to the very beginning of the space age. October 4th, 1957, humanity entered a new era. The first artificial satellite was launched into orbit. A small metal sphere, but a giant leap forward. For the first time, something built by humans had left the Earth behind. Just 4 years later, on April 12, 1961, a human traveled into space and returned safely. The impossible was becoming reality. Around the world, people watched in amazement. Space was no longer just a dream. It was becoming something real. But progress came with challenges. Rockets failed. Launches ended in explosions. Engineers faced problems no one had ever solved before. Each failure became a lesson. Each success brought new confidence. But reaching space was only the beginning. Living there introduced entirely new problems. In orbit, there was no gravity to guide movement. Objects floated freely. Even the human body behaved differently. Muscles weakened. Balance became difficult. Astronauts had to relearn how to move, how to eat, how to work. Scientists studied every mission closely, turning uncertainty into knowledge. Across the world, families gathered around televisions, watching history unfold. Each launch, each mission, brought humanity closer to something greater. On May 25, 1961, a bold objective was set: to land a human on the moon and return them safely before the end of the decade. At the time, it seemed impossible. But work began immediately. Over the next 8 years, more than 400,000 people contributed to the mission. The scale of the challenge was enormous. The rocket built for the mission stood taller than most buildings. Every stage of the flight required perfect timing. Computers, far less powerful than today, performed complex calculations in real time. Every wire, every switch, every system had to work together perfectly. There was no room for failure, only preparation. Among those chosen for the mission was a man known for his calm under pressure. A test pilot, an engineer, person who remained steady, even when everything around him was not. Training pushed him beyond limits. Simulations recreated worst-case scenarios. Systems failed without warning. Signals disappeared. Decisions had to be made instantly. These were not just exercises. They were preparation for moments where hesitation could mean failure. Every reaction became instinct, because in space, there would be no time to think. On July 20th, 1969, the descent began. The spacecraft moved slowly toward the surface. At first, everything appeared normal. The onboard computer guided the descent, calculating every movement. Then, a warning appeared. Then another. The computer was overloaded. Inside the spacecraft, tension rose instantly. On the ground, engineers followed every signal. The decision had to be made: continue or abort. The mission continued, but the danger had not passed. The landing area was not safe. Rocks and craters stretched across the surface. Control had to be taken manually. Now everything depended on human skill. The spacecraft moved forward, searching. Every second reduced the available fuel. Every movement required precision. Too fast. Failure. Too slow. No fuel. Fuel levels dropped. At 60 seconds remaining, there was still no landing. 30 seconds. Time was almost gone. The final seconds stretched endlessly. Inside the spacecraft, focus replaced fear. Outside, the surface waited in silence. The spacecraft descended. Dust began to rise. The landing was successful. Hours later, the hatch opened. Slowly, carefully, a human being stepped onto the surface. The ground was silent. No wind, no sound, only dust shifting beneath each step. A footprint formed, marking a moment that would last forever. Soon, another joined. Together, they explored this new world. For the first time, humanity was not just observing another world, but standing on it. When the mission ended, the impact was immediate. Around the world, people reflected on what had been achieved. Space was no longer distant. It was possible. The idea of exploration had changed forever. On July 24, 1969, they returned safely to Earth. But what they brought back was more than data. For the first time, humanity saw its home as one, a single world, floating in space. The mission proved that even the most difficult goals can be achieved. With knowledge, with effort, with determination, it all came down, and that changed humanity forever. And then, the noise faded. The voices, the applause, the urgency of the moment, all dissolved into silence. The broadcasts ended. The headlines were printed, read, and slowly forgotten. The world returned to its rhythm. Cities moved. People worked. Life continued. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in history, humanity had stepped beyond its home. And there was no going back. Because once you have seen the Earth, from the outside, you can never see it the same way again. From that distance, all the things that divide us disappear. There are no borders drawn across the oceans, no lines cutting through continents, no nations, no conflict, no noise, just a single sphere, suspended in darkness, a thin layer of atmosphere, protecting everything we have ever known, every life, every story, every dream, fragile, beautiful, alone. And in that realization came a new understanding that this world is not just where we live, it is all we have. And while the astronauts returned home, something else had already begun. Across the world, in quiet homes, in crowded streets, in places far from launch pads and laboratories, people looked up, and among them were children, children who would grow up not asking if we could reach the stars, but when, that moment, planted something deeper than achievement, planted belief that the impossible was only temporary, that limits were meant to be challenged, and that the sky was no longer the limit, it was only the beginning. Since that day, we have not stopped. We have sent machines across millions of kilometers, landing on distant worlds, exploring planets that once existed only in imagination. We have built stations in orbit, lived in space, and continued to push further, step by step. Mars now stands on the horizon, not as a dream, but as a destination. And beyond it, possibilities we have yet to understand. Because exploration is not something we do. It is who we are. The 12 minutes were never just about landing on the moon. They were about proving something far greater. That, in the face of uncertainty, fear, and the unknown, humanity moves forward. Not perfectly, not without failure, but with courage, with persistence, with vision. And as we look ahead, toward new worlds, new challenges, and new frontiers, one truth remains: the story of space is the story of us.